Welcome to the Kings Beat podcast. I am James Ham, your Kings insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. Joining me, Fox 40's Sean Cunningham. Sean, how are you?
Fantastic. I'm really uplifted because I gave Brenden a homework assignment and he delivered in under 24 hours. He watched the movie Seven, which means he can understand this shirt right here.
That's right.
Brenden?
I forgot that there was a shirt involved with this as well. It was a great movie. I know what's in the box. I had actually seen it before, but didn't realize I'd seen it until probably 10 minutes in or so. That's my type of movie. You know, I like these sort of dumb comedies here and there, but those like more suspenseful movies are my cup of tea. So I appreciate you having me. I will admit, I put it on last night and fell asleep and finished it this morning, but it was a great movie.
You idiot.
It doesn't mean I didn't like it. It was still a great movie.
Okay, and of course, that's Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast. Brenden, I think maybe if that's sort of your genre, maybe we go with Memento. Have you seen Memento? Yeah, see, that's one that you're going to be like, oh, okay, this is messed up. So that's another good one. Yeah.
Memento.
Gotcha. Memento. Yeah. Who is that? Why am I drawing a blank on his name?
It's Guy Pearce.
Guy Pearce.
Yeah. And Joe Pantoliano and
Joey Pants.
the girl from The Matrix. Isn't she in it? Is that Carrie Ann Moss?
Yeah, that is Carrie Ann Moss. I'm not sure if that's who's in it. I can't remember. Yeah, good.
And I will say this: it was fun being around training camp yesterday because my shirt had just arrived. I had sent a picture of it to my cousin, and I was really excited about it. And I was like, "Okay, let's play a game here. Let's go around and just say simple yes or no if you understand the reference to the movie." Everyone pretty much got it. And I was like, "Brenden, do you know what this is?" He had no clue. I said, "Okay, homework assignment. You must watch Seven."
And every other member of the media was also telling me that I had to watch it.
Right.
Well, it's because it's a thing, Brenden, that you don't watch movies, and we have to educate you. This is like 1 2-hour block at a time. We're trying to culturize.
Brenden,
it's 2 1-hour blocks.
That's true.
Brenden, would there have been any chance? Because again, you said you had seen it before. Once you realized you had seen it before, watching that in real time, do you feel you would have been able to like turn it off like you did and wait to finish it the next day?
Well, I don't turn it up. What do you mean? Like, could someone just pause it at any point, and would I be annoyed with that?
Correct. Yeah, if you were watching it for the first time, do you think you're like, okay, yeah, it's fine. Let's stop here and we'll pick this up tomorrow or another time?
It's just because I watch things when I fall asleep.
God damn it, Brenden.
It wasn't like I was invested.
Fell asleep
I
to
just
7?
fall asleep. Like I fall asleep to shows if I'm watching them late. It's just been a thing.
That's amazing. Okay, so let's take care of some business. First and foremost, if you're watching on YouTube, give us a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button. If you're listening on any of the like 800 different platforms that are now available to listen to podcasts, give us a rating and review. The more stars, the better. All of those things help our metrics and help us grow. Let's see, outside of that, I did not lie. On Tuesday, I said I was going to start gating some content on the Kings Beat. I did gate content. I'm sorry if that upsets you. But
can you explain what that means? Because it was a new concept to me when you said
okay, so gating content means that if you click on one of the emails that gets sent to you and you get maybe 3 paragraphs into the article, it then says, in order to read the remainder of the article, you must subscribe. So it's gated. It's basically paywalled. Well, I mean, the Kings Beat has always been a paywall, but we haven't gated a lot of content. What we have done is we've done the happy hours and stuff like that to kind of get around it. But in year 2, like, we got a lot of loyal listeners and a lot of people who are premium subscribers. So now everyone is going to have to be on the same level playing field. Although I'm not going to gate all content where things like the podcast here, like today, won't be gated. But more articles will be gated this year than they have been in the past. And so jump on board with the Kings Beat, get a premium subscription. And just keep in mind that like it's $7 a month for the Kings Beat or $75 for a year. And that's like 1 gallon of gas which I expend like maybe 5 going to the arena and back. So like I know it's $7, but at the same time it's $7. Come on now, let's go.
And you put in a nice autograph photo or something like that, right?
What, they get an autograph photo
No?
with their subscription?
Yeah,
When
James
they
Harden.
buy
I
stuff,
thought
I do personalized notes when they buy Kings Beat merchandise. They do get personalized notes.
tasteful
Like,
nudes.
yeah, tasteful nudes. Tasteful. Okay, so we have nothing to talk about, so we're just gonna drag on talking about movies the rest of the show.
Right. People love
Because
that.
what the
people
people
do
want.
love that. Yeah, we're at the 5:37 mark of the show, and we haven't started talking about basketball yet. It's been an interesting week. Let's start with Brenden. Brenden, this is your first training camp. We talked about this on Tuesday when it came to media day a little bit. But what are your first thoughts on just sort of getting the flow of training camp and just the abundance of content that hits you in the face, and then you have to sit there and figure out how to, like, what is meaningful and what's not, and just, the brutality of the first week of getting back to basketball.
Yeah, at this point, once we reach day 3 and day 4 will be tomorrow, it does feel a little bit repetitive with some of the answers we're getting. And, there's no new games for us to base anything off of or anything like that. So I think if anything, you can catch up on, or you can catch on to trends and like things that guys keep repeating. And I think like focusing on details has been something that obviously Mike Brown is known for, but also just hearing that echoed from the players. Fox and Domas, who we got yesterday, both highlighted him talking about some rules on the defensive end that he's been implementing as well. So I think it's kind of trying to pick up on the different things that are being repeated, because at this point we're talking to these same people a couple times over without having any new games in front of us or anything like that. And yeah, I don't have a great reference points when it comes to what last year looked like to compare with Mike Brown coming into this year, but it definitely seems like there's a good energy around the team and some optimism going into the year with Mike Brown. But what's your guys' perspective, having done this for a long time now?
Yeah, Sean, you're the old hat. What do you got for us?
The old hat. Yeah, I mean, you start to reach some boring monotony of camp, but this one's been a little fun. Like I remember saying how I think a Mike Brown camp is going to get back to way basketball structurally and teaching, and it's going to be a lot of that, and that it might just be an old boring kind of camp from that standpoint. And that was I was saying that as a good thing because of just all the structure that's around a typical training camp and what he's going to bring to the Kings. But we've had Barry Bonds show up at camp already.
Oh,
We've
yeah?
had the first week. We haven't even had a preseason game, and you already have Bennett Salvatore, the old NBA referee, stopping by camp to go over points of emphasis for the season, new rule changes, things of that nature. I know I think Brenden had remarked on a lot of the take foul on his social media commentary, so people can kind of check that out. But yeah, those are things that the Barry Bonds thing was completely different, but I mean, every year the officials come in, and it might be after your first preseason game when they come in. I think they like to do it before, but to have it on day 3 was a little bit unique. So yeah, it's great to see some of those things already have taken place. I hope we get to see a little bit more of what camp is looking like. I think a lot of it right now is very structured, and there's not really, it's a lot of teaching, a lot of concepts and plays, and a lot of 5-on-0 as De'Aaron Fox had alluded to yesterday. So we're not really seeing a whole lot of it, but that first day, as players will tell you, that the weeks leading up to training camp is so that you can get ready for training camp, not try to get into shape, not get in shape right when training camp goes and use those weeks. You want to make sure it's ahead of that, and a lot of running in that first day. But since then, we haven't seen a lot of it. So a lot of what's been going on. So yeah, we'll hopefully be able to get to see some more here in the coming days, and then preseason game right around the corner.
Yeah, preseason on Monday. The Kings face the Los Angeles Lakers in LA. Is it still crypto, or did that already go bankrupt?
Crypto.com.
That hasn't gone bankrupt yet. I'm just saying.
Ooh,
We're
shots fired.
Just asking for a friend.
Yeah, just okay, I got you.
Yeah. So, like through 3 days at camp, we had Mike Brown twice. The first day we had Keegan Murray and Kevin Herter. Second day we had Davion Mitchell and Malik Monk. Day three we had De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis. And I think we're gonna focus a lot of our conversation around those two, just because like it kind of does feel like they set us up with like two guys who are maybe starters, but probably starters as the first day. Day two, we got the backcourt bench pairing. Day three, we got the two stars of the team. I think day four, we'll probably get Harrison Barnes and Rashawn Holmes. That would be my guess. So we're sort of getting these small groupings of players. But we're gonna run a clip of, let's start with Fox, because we have two clips today, and I just want to like, the good thing about seeing Foxes here is there's a smile on his face, and it's something that I think he had lost a little bit, and I feel like there's a good energy with him. So let's play the first clip. Darren, you've been here a long time. Just how does this season feel different, and what do you want to have go right for you this season, where a lot of things spun out quickly last year?
I mean, for us, it's really just competing from the opening tip of the first game until the last game, if that's in the playoffs or not. So, a lot of teams have ups and downs, but whenever you're down, you can't, have guys go separate ways and be splitting off. And I think every coach, every player in the league will tell you that. So, and y'all could probably guess who that was. But yeah, it's really just coming together early and staying together through all the goods and bads.
Does it feel like Mike is sort of a reset button for you and the rest of this team?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously I've been a part of the organization, but like I said, this is an entirely different team from any of the past 5 that I've had.
All right, Sean, why don't we go to you for clarification on what what happened there in the middle, because it seemed to have taken on a life of its own, where people were speculating on what Fox might be talking about, but it really was like, it's when I put the video out, when you put the video out, I don't think either one of us thought that there was anything to it at all, because we were there live, but that video did kind of take a life of its own.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious, like he's reacting to something he saw. But I guess, again, maybe it's because, like you said, James, we were there. But yeah, Jay Triano hucked a ball off a basket, and he reacted to it. So, but I mean, it came at an odd time because, yeah, he is talking about the way the team could separate, the way losing can affect a team. So, keeping the cohesiveness and keeping that chemistry together is important. So, I don't think necessarily it was a terrible thing that somebody drew conclusions as to who he was talking about, because those people were part of the previous team, but it's not just exclusive to them. I mean, it's a major factor with apathy that happens to creep into a team and when they're losing. And so yeah, man, this is a team, and he's talked about it, and I agree with him. It's the most ready talent that he's had around him, and he's part of that. I mean, he's had to be a guy who's developed his own way as well. So they're ready for prime time, I think, and I think this is a team that is looking forward to competing. But again, it's a lot of words because no one's lost yet. So they're trying to make a lot of inroads before facing their first 4-game losing streak. These are part of things that happen in the course of a season. And then what happens? How do they fray? Do they separate? Do they keep the course? Are people unhappy with roles? Things of that nature. So this is that's a big thing. And you have a lot of professionals on the team right now, and you have a lot of guys who've experienced what it's like to win, what it's like to lose, what a star player is all about, what professionalism and structure and discipline are all about. And this is big boy league. This is professionals. So it's not a bunch of young guys anymore.
Yeah, Brendan, I want to bring up something that Fox started with, and that is that it's got to be from opening tip of opening night all the way through the full 82 games. And I'll take away the end of the season where Fox actually had a broken bone in his hand and there was some miscommunication about that, and so he missed the last portion of the season where he literally couldn't hold the ball. But we all know that what happened last year really started at the beginning of the season with Fox coming in and not looking like Fox at all. And so I like to hear that he's saying from opening night, I've got to be this, we've got to be this. And I think that's something that I keyed on really quickly, that he understands. So all the people out there that like think that maybe some of these players don't get it or they're not paying attention, that showed me pretty clearly that Fox has been paying attention to what people have thought about him last season, about how his season went. And just Brenden, where did you take that?
I definitely caught on to the same. And like you're pointing out, I think that's been a big critique of Fox, not only last year, but years prior as well, that there's just some inconsistency, that the first half of the year, maybe he's not quite the same guy that you want him to be. And just him highlighting the importance of that, I think does go a long way. And one of the other things that he mentioned a little bit later that I think falls into the same is he really talked about accountability, and that you can't be afraid to say something. And Mike Brown is going to make sure that he is someone who says something. So I think just the theme that we've heard of the details, the competitiveness, just all kind of falls into that. And if they get a locked in De'Aaron Fox for a large majority of the season, I mean, we've seen what he's capable of doing, and it's probably somewhere in the middle compared to the beginning of the year, or that stretch he had at the end where he was just totally on fire. It's probably somewhere in the middle of that. But, if they get a really locked in De'Aaron Fox all year long, then I think that obviously the team is in a much better spot. And I think it would do a lot for how people view him as well.
Go ahead, Sean.
No, I was going to say too, I agree with everything there. And I think it's important to point out that when you listen to those comments again, it's not so much finger pointing at other people. Like, he's including himself in that. And that's why I mentioned the apathy of it, because I think for him, he's a player who has struggled with just going through the motions and relying on the talent and that he has, and not necessarily the, we've documented it pretty well. Sometimes he gets up for certain matchups, and other guys he doesn't kind of get up and have that same vigor. But he's been a guy who tends to put the pedal to the metal in the fourth quarter, and coast maybe through certain other quarters. So I think it's holding himself accountable more than anything. I don't necessarily think he's pointing his finger at Buddy Hield or Marvin Bagley or guys that have been teammates of his in the past. I think it's a collective unit, and my takeaway of it is he's really putting a lot on himself. And as you said, as he's talked about, sustaining the same type of energy, that same type of zest, if you will, from tip-off to the final game of the season. And it's we all talk about the marathon and what the season is and how long it is, and again, what does it look like when you hit the little smallest patch of adversity? And for him, it coincides with learning how to play off ball. I know that's a huge topic that we've been, not just for him but other players. They're really talking about what guys should be doing when playing off ball, especially if you're running through a big man like Domantas Sabonis.
Yeah, so I think that really does bring us to, that is the next topic. I mean, I think it's really interesting. I don't want this to come off as like an accusation about the people that were here before, but it feels like when we're talking to Sabonis, when we're talking to Fox, it's not just like, a lot of times we walk into a season and a coach starts laying out what he wants to see. It feels like this coaching staff, as soon as Mike Brown was hired, he reaches out, he hires Luke Locks. As soon as he brings in him, he sends him straight to De'Aaron Fox. And it was with the express intent to get Fox to play off the ball, to learn how to shoot off the ball, to get comfortable off the ball, to learn how to play with Sabonis, to learn how to play when Sabonis is off the court, but to not always just have to be the driving force of the team. And then we see the same thing with Sabonis, where Sabonis is out there working with, Chris Matthews, lethal shooter. It wasn't just that this is going to be who we are going into this season, but it feels like for one of the first times that I can remember, there was a game plan that was put in place early on to sort of shore up some of the things, shore up some of the issues that some of these players have. And it wasn't just like, hey, we're going to get to camp and we're going to try to work through this. They hit the ground running in June or July and really started putting in some mechanisms in place to support and help these guys get into this season. And the reason I bring this up because this feels almost exactly the opposite of what happened last year and why we got to last year. And one of the reasons Fox wasn't effective early in the season was very specific. They handed the ball to Tyrese Halliburton and said, okay, go ahead and direct the traffic for 50% of the time or more. And you could see right away that Fox was uncomfortable, that that's not what he was used to, and it wasn't what he had sort of prepared for. And all of a sudden, he's being told to do something totally different than what felt natural to him as a basketball player. And I know that other coaches do this, and this, again, it's not an accusation on the previous guys because they're still trying to fit everything together, and they didn't have a player like Sabonis to work with. But you guys get what I'm saying? It feels like there is a clear plan in place specifically for Fox and for Sabonis on how they can make this whole thing work.
I definitely see that. I mean, like you pointed out with De'Aaron, I mean, he said yesterday that he was been working with Luke on his off-ball ability, shooting and cutting and things like that since June. And he said it's different from anything he's done before, and being taught that is super different. So I think that, like you're pointing out, what we saw with him and Tyrese last year, the your turn, my turn, I think that they both looked, De'Aaron specifically looked pretty uncomfortable off the ball. And I don't think that that's something that he's just like incapable of making an impact off the ball or anything. I think to your point, is just something that he's not used to doing, and maybe wasn't coming into the year thinking that that was going to be the case. And obviously that's more obvious with Domas, and maybe the jump that Tyrese took wasn't quite expected. It certainly wasn't expected from my point of view. So I'm sure that factors in as well. But, playing off of Domas is also a more natural fit, I think, for De'Aaron, just them being able to play together, which also helps in it. But they definitely seemed different, specifically from De'Aaron's point of view, of the level of him talking about working as an off-ball player going into this year.
Yeah, and it had to happen because it was an obvious blight on the team. James was probably sick of me hearing about it when we were talking about what the struggles of De'Aaron Fox was last year. And I was talking about, I was like, he's playing off ball. De'Aaron Fox standing in the corner is not good for anyone, not good for any team for their success. You got a Ferrari and you just parked it. Like, that's not good. And it's not like he's a knockdown shooter from the corner anyway. So, man, it's good to see that they identified things, and that's one of the reasons why, they had ultimate belief in De'Aaron. They also had the hefty commitment to him. And when you have a huge contract like that, it's harder to trade as opposed to someone who is an up and comer who has a rookie contract for the next 4 years and team control and all that. Like, that's why the Pacers were so high on Halliburton, and we've gone through all those scenarios as to people who go, why was it Halliburton and not Fox, especially if Fox is the one that's struggling. Well, you put the ball back in his hands, Halliburton's gone, you got a guy, an all-star type talent like Domantas Sabonis, and you move the ball the way he does in a half-court set, and he's so dominant in the paint, and people can just cut around him. Like, you see it. It was just unfortunate that it's such a small sample size that they had to work together last year, but now you have the whole off season and you've got a camp, and this is why they're building around it. You have to build talent around it and shooting around it, and they might have something here, hopefully. And I think for Fox, he recognized it right away. He knew what he was going through, and that uncomfortable, that you want to be uncomfortable. You want to know what it's like to be uncomfortable when you're in this league, and you identify the things you have to get better at. And I think that was something not only the Kings identified, but he certainly did. And with Sabonis, man, for as talented as he is, the only thing that he can't really do is shoot. And so that's something he works on every single year. That didn't take Mike Brown. That didn't take the front office to say, hey, we want you to do more of this. And that's something that he's trying to do every single year. So you get with different trainers. Maybe it's a trainer you haven't seen before. In this case, it was Lethal Shooter, and you go and you try to make inroads and try to get improve from the perimeter, because in this day and age, everyone needs to be able to knock down threes.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting. Like, I think I made the statement last year that we got to a certain point in the season where, the Kings did make upgrades in the offseason last year, and they came into the year and there
Did
was
they?
some
Last year, did they?
They did more than they did the year before. They had actually gone out and got a few players. And I think when we looked at that team, it's like, why is this team so bad? And I think I made this statement sometime either during the summer or like at the end of the season. I think we learned very quickly that just the core wasn't good enough, right? And that's what I kept thinking, like the core isn't good enough. But I kept thinking they should be better than this. And I know you hate the word should, but like the whole time you kept thinking like that's not a 30-win team. Like,
Sure
are they a
was.
45-win team? No, but was that a 30? Like, and barely clawing your way to 30? I didn't see that. I mean, that team looked like they were a better team, and I'm starting to think that maybe it was partially, talent and partially like a bad mix of players. But I think the other thing we got to look at is that they didn't plan to go into the season and see the carry split so much between the 2 point guards. And it just added this whole weird wrinkle to the whole thing, and nothing felt right. And I don't think they could even put their finger on it as much as just everything felt wrong. Nothing felt like smooth and flowing. It was always like stop and go. And again, maybe it wasn't that the team was just like that they weren't talented enough. Maybe it was that they didn't have an idea of who they should be coming into the season, where I think that's something that we kind of see that they're addressing right now.
Well, it's more than talent. I mean, you're being nice. I mean, that team sucked. It was a poor construction of talent. They were focused on trying to elevate young guys and have them develop and try to compete at the same time. There's nothing wrong with that. They thought ancillary pieces as opposed to disrupting the core or major pieces, it would help grow those pieces. It's the basketball IQ wasn't there. You had a bunch of immaturity, and I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just you're not there yet. There's some players take time to develop, and then you have to build chemistry, and that's why having somebody like Harrison Barnes was so crucial for them, because you have a guy who knows what it's like, but you're looking around going, God, I'm surrounded by idiots, because they don't have what he knows. They don't have the smarts that he did, and that's why when you put Tyrese Halliburton on the floor, who has a very high basketball IQ and feel for the game, he sticks out like a sore thumb. It's like, oh my God, this guy's great. Yeah, he is great, but a lot of guys should be like that. A lot of guys should have the feel for the game that way. It was compared to the rest of the people that he was around, he was elite in that way. And I don't mean to I'm just calling a spade here. Like, that just wasn't a good team. And I didn't predict that team to win 40 win. I mean, I'm always very low on that, until you got to kind of see it first. And that's why I always say, kind of have to see what it looks like first. And every year you had a collection of guys where it's like, all right, this is a rollover from the beginning, or especially last year where it's like, all right, we're going to bet on some of the moves that they added, the Mo Harkless of the world, and I can't even remember. Terrence Davis. Yeah, these are guys that you're bringing in, and Terrence is a young guy himself. He's not a veteran player, so you're betting on some of those paying off. And they added some toughness to the team and the physicality to the team, which was good, but it wasn't, I think, enough to sustain success throughout a season. And you didn't do anything to the core at that point. So it wasn't for lack of trying, and I get it, but this year is different in that way because you have surrounded them with quality depth. And that's something I like to harp on a lot when we're talking about what does a team look like. You can put names on jerseys, but quality, I mean, all you have to do, guys, this is it's not a fun game, but all you have to do is go through the rosters of the past few players of the past few seasons, look at players who are still on NBA rosters.
Yeah, that's startling. There's 7
and that's what I
from
mean.
the 2020 opening night roster that are not in the league right now.
Right. And then of
7.
the ones that who are rotational players, it's even smaller. So it's
none of those guys.
I'm not trying to make fun of anyone or put shame on them, but it's like that's the difference between depth and quality depth. Look at the people that you just brought in. You've got a guy in Malik Monk coming off of a career year. Kevin Huerter is a solid starter for the Atlanta Hawks, who went deep into the playoffs 2 years ago. And these are things that you're bringing into your team that if you're fast forwarding 3 or 4 years from now, they're still going to be effective players in the league.
Yeah, I don't think that I didn't think Tristan Thompson was taking the team to 40 wins or anything last year, but I definitely thought that they were better than a 30-win roster when it came to that talent, but it looked like they just lost. They never gained an identity. If anything, their identity was a negative thing that probably don't even need to mention. They were just consistently horrible on defense. And then there was a lack of trust that seemed to like just expand as the year went on, like, and that's something that we've seen talked about in this training camp, that Mike Brown and I think Domantas Sabonis was the other one to talk about the importance of trust, and Mike Brown specifically, that I trust that if I go all out on the defensive end, that the guys next to me are going to do the same, so my effort won't go wasted. And I think that we saw the other end of that a lot last year. And then the other word we've seen float around a lot, that I just mentioned, is identity. I think that Mike Brown said that we still don't know what our identity is. Davion said the same. And I think figuring out what that exactly can be. And if you want to say last year's was being a high-paced offense, you're not getting out in transition if you never stop anyone on the other end. So I'm not buying that one. Like, they need to figure out what the identity of this team is, because that didn't happen last year, and remain trusting with everybody among them and have a sense of like camaraderie and just effort that doesn't wane.
Yeah, and I think also to that point, pardon me, like, you know what they want to be. You know what they want their identity to be. It's just you don't know what it is yet.
What do you think
is,
they want it to be?
I think they want to be a defensive team that can at least get into the top 15, or at least be between 15 and 20. That would be a huge stride. That would be a huge step forward if they were able to do that based on where they currently stand. It's not going to happen overnight. I think that's something that could be possible, if you will. I think it's an attainable goal as opposed to a far-fetched goal. And I think that they know that they want to play fast and they want to score. And I think what they look at, and it's the stuff James and I and you even, Brenden, you're a team that has the ability to run fast and score fast and play up tempo, and then you take yourself out of it and you try to slow it down at times when things get rough, where it's like, you already know you suck defensively. You better be a fast-paced team and try to outscore teams, because clearly you're not a good defensive team. So when you take yourself out of scoring, you're hurting yourself. You're basically putting more defense upon yourself and helping the other team. So they want to play fast, but they want to play. I mean, they know what they want. It's just, can you do it? And it's going to take more than one training camp and one season to accomplish. But I feel like they can find characteristics that are trending the right way. Obviously not in the first few days of training camp, but hopefully a month from now and 2 months from now, they start to see what this team can actually be. And they'll know it a lot faster than we will, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, this team was bad on both ends of the court. I mean, they finished 25th in the league in offensive rating and 27th in defensive rating. Pace didn't matter. Their pace was, I think, 8th or 9th in the league. It didn't matter. They were just flat out bad. They were an inefficient offense. Yeah, they were a totally inefficient offense. When they made all the trades at the deadline, they brought in a bunch of guys who should have been good shooters and didn't hit any shots. I mean, it was really a mess. The whole thing was a mess, and we had these little glimpses and of positivity, and then it would be followed by weeks of chaos and things falling apart completely. I think Mike Brown's going to have the ship going one direction this year, and that's a good thing. Like, everyone has to buy into Mike Brown because he's going to be here. And you know what? I think that kind of brings us to the other clip that we have, which is Sabonis and sort of how he fits into this whole puzzle that we're talking about. And I think having a guy like Sabonis, it changes everything, because he's not flashy. He's a guy that comes in and grinds, who's there every day, who, you know, his intention is to be an all-star and to be great. But he also does all the things that you need to do to be great. He passes the ball well. He rebounds the ball well. He's not a great defensive player, but he's not a bad position defender. He's just not a leaper, and he doesn't have great length. But let's get to the clip of Sabonis really quick. This one's a little longer, about 2 minutes.
Is it a tough adjustment for you being someone that's such a playmaker, getting used to tendencies and the spots that everybody likes it at with such a new group?
Yeah, you just gotta. The more you play with the guys, you gotta learn where they like the ball and what areas and stuff like that. But with the new system coaches are putting in, we're still all just trying to find our spots.
How was it going through your first camp here in Sacramento?
Going great. Going great. Weather's awesome. Coaches are doing a great job. Guys are full of energy, so it's great.
Is it because you came in the middle of the season last year? Does this feel like a fresh start, like a complete reset, especially with the new coaching staff?
Yeah, of course. It feels. I would say it feels completely different. Like a lot of new faces. It feels like it's a whole new team, just the same facility.
What do you think you're excited for most? Being able to spend the full season, getting to know new teammates, coaches, things like that.
It's definitely easier, to play once you get to know your players more and more. And the more games we have, the more practices. Going through a training camp is going to help us a lot.
How is your relationship with De'Aaron, both on and off the court, sort of developing that chemistry?
It's great. It's great. Both of us are trying to do what's best for the team. We're in training camp. Everyone's just trying to learn everything the coaches want us to do, and hopefully this afternoon practice we get to play up and down a bit, so it's going to be more fun.
He's talked about learning to play off the ball more.
Yeah.
I imagine moving with you, and what are you seeing from him in that way? And is that you guys developing some comfort?
Coach really wants us to play off the ball in general, and if Fox and I can develop our two-man game doing that, it's going to be even harder to stop, because when it's just pick and roll, eventually it gets easier. It gets easier to guard after a period of time. But if we can develop an off-ball game, then it's going to be really tough.
Yeah, there's something about Sabonis's media availability that I want to point out, and we get about 5 minutes with each player, and because he talks so fast, it ends up being like a speed round. Do you guys feel that? Like when he's done, like he's sweating, we're sweating. It's like, holy cow, that was hectic. It was like, Brenden, you were talking so fast on your initial question. It was like, wow, like you're like staccato, like blah, 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 like, because you start getting into a flow with him where he's just like, he's super intense and he's super quick and he's like blah, 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 and next question, and we end up getting like 40 questions in 5 minutes, which, like, I don't know what the math is off the top of my head, but that's like really quick.
He's very PR trained. I have to imagine the media relations staff loves Stomos for that. Like, he gives you what, I guess there's not right and wrong answers, but I think he gets as close to like what the right answers would be for a lot of these things. And he's a big fan of the weather, apparently. Sean might need to talk to him when it's raining and see what he feels about that. But I feel like he's mentioned the weather a few different times in these pressers.
Dude came from Indiana. The weather out there is frightful.
Fair point. Fair point. But I think the idea, one big takeaway I had from his time with Lithuania was like, there's a lot of times where he's trying to hit these passes and guys aren't quite getting there in time, or maybe just not comfortable with those teammates. And as somebody that is constantly setting guys up, I think it just made me realize the extent of how important it is for him to have good chemistry with the guys around him. And I think with there being so much turnover on this roster, that's going to be a little bit of a growing period for him. But there's a handful of guys he's comfortable with. He talked about how he likes having the athletic wings on this roster that he can obviously help unlock when it comes to cutting and things like that. But I think that Domas is definitely someone you got to pull things out of when it comes to these interviews for sure.
Well, and I think also, one of the things, and not to be selfish here, but like I really enjoyed the answer to the question I had, because I think there's a lot of people who think that Domantas Sabonis is a guy who makes everyone better on the floor, right? And he is that type of player. But for a lot of guys, having a player like that is an adjustment. And I don't even mean just De'Aaron Fox. I'm talking about like you have to have motion around him. And oftentimes when he had the ball in his hands, dudes were like this. And they're just watching him. Like, what are you going to do? And part of learning how to play with a player like that also coincides with like you have guys who have to learn how to play around that, and you have shooters who have to move. They can't just stay stationary. You have to have motion around him. That's going to be a big thing. But there's a lot on him as well. And I've touched on it in previous podcasts. Like, I'm coming into the season saying I want him to be more selfish, not to take away from the ability that he brings. That's an elite ability he has to play make, to set up his teammates, to be that good teammate. That's elite. But I also feel he has an elite capability, ambidextrous in the paint, and he has an arsenal down there. Like, you got to use that. And I know they wanted him to shoot more. I think his scoring impact itself should be at an all-time high this year, in my opinion. I think that's how they're going to have to utilize him in order to sustain success for him, especially because I think they're going to probably be involved in a lot of close games. So if you look at Indiana last year, I mean, they were a team, even before you started hearing his name in trade rumors, I was watching how Indiana, not watching a lot of Indiana games necessarily, although I did see quite a few because they were on a lot of those close games coming down the stretch. They were a lot of tough luck losers in those games. And oftentimes I felt myself wondering, like, why isn't Sabonis, even the game, dude, if you remember, guys, the game that he came here, he wasn't that good. Like, he was not that good in the game here. And they would lose a lot of close games. And it was a lot of times because he wasn't taking shots. He was relying on teammates, XYZ, whatever. It didn't matter. Like, the defense wasn't great either. They missed, Brogdon for a long time. I think there's something that can be more brought out of him from an offensive standpoint and a scoring standpoint that this team is really going to need.
Yeah, I'm going to say this. I'm slightly concerned that there aren't a lot of players on the Kings roster who have ever played with a player like him. And I know there aren't a lot of players like him in the league, but the fact that Kevin Huerter's only played with rim runners like his whole entire career. He talked about it, like, was it Bruno Fernando that he played with at Maryland, Clint Capella that he's played with the last couple of years. Malik Monk said, like, yeah, I played with a passing big man and Anthony Davis last year, but before that, no. Harrison Barnes can go back to his playing with Draymond Green days, I guess, but that's a long time ago. And Fox has never played with somebody. Davion's never played with.
Well, he also had Bogut, though. Can't. Bogut was really.
No, that's true. Yeah, there was Bogut. Yeah, so yeah, I think Barnes has played with some of these guys, right? But I think it's going to require like an adjustment period where people are learning like how to cut, like how to do the things that they have to do. I think Keegan might have a little bit because he did play with, who would you play with, the big
Luka
man?
Garza.
Luka Garza, yeah. So there's going to be a little bit of that where he does have, he's played with a big man before. And some guys, it's just naturally in their game. And I think the transition for a guy like Huerter is going to be pretty simple because he knows where just to find seams and to move around on the perimeter and be open. So I think that will help him. But I also think that there could be a little bit of growing pains when it comes to, how you play with Sabonis, how you move around the court. And you talked about, Brenden, it's a good point, like the Lithuanian team. I think when I watched a lot of those games, they just weren't, the players around him just weren't good enough. Like, it just flat out. They didn't have a great feel for the game of basketball. Like, most of the Kings players walk on the court and just have such a better feel for the game than any of those guys. And the fact that you had to play him with Valanciunas for stretches, that didn't help you either because then you're just totally clogging the lane. I think it's going to be interesting. The potential on the offensive end for this to be a top 10 offense is totally there. They were a top 10 offense 2 years ago. I think they finished number 9 with under Luke. Like, this team can actually play offense. So, it's going to be, can they balance everything? And will Mike Brown help them balance that? Or is he going to be fighting to slow it down until they play defense and then try to speed it up later and sort of have this stop and go? I think it's like there is some, like, clearly there's a lot of coaching and a lot of teaching that has to go into this training camp and the first couple of weeks of the season.
Yeah, I think that what you pointed out with the guys that have and haven't played with a big like Sabonis and getting used to that is definitely something that I've been monitoring. I'm actually writing something on that today that'll go up on the Kings Herald. And I think that Huerter was definitely the one that stood out as he was pretty vocal about, like, yeah, it's going to be a little bit of an adjustment. You mentioned Bruno Fernando, Clint Capella, like just kind of playing with rim runners. I thought it was interesting when Sabonis talked about Huerter that he highlighted that he was pretty excited about Huerter's potential to play in a pick and roll. And I think that that's a way that that duo can mesh pretty quickly right away. Fox also mentioned how Herter maybe is unfairly viewed as just a catch and shoot guy by a lot of people throughout the league, and he's able to do a lot more. So I think that that's definitely going to be an adjustment period. And I'm kind of opposite of Sean in a way of I kind of think that Domas is just going to be like the assist numbers is what I really am thinking this year is going to be big for him. And at times when all the movement and spacing that he's going to have will allow him to get his own buckets. But I think that there's a lot of guys on this team, specifically when you look at like what our projected starting five is. I think that all of those guys function so well off of a passing big like Domas. I think that De'Aaron, hearing how much he's highlighted and focused on being an off-ball player, and also just the skills, like the not only top speed but the jerkiness that he has to his game. I think he can be a phenomenal off-ball player and cutter, especially if his catch and shoot shot is going down, which we've seen be converted at an okay rate throughout the course of his career. So I think that playing through Domas is obviously going to be huge, and I think that that's going to be a different adjustment for different guys. Like Davion is someone that stands out to me as I could see that being a pretty tough adjustment for him. I can't think of bigs at Baylor that he was playing off of or anything like that. And he's somebody that I thought functioned a lot better with the ball in his hands compared to off of it on the offensive end. So I think learning to play with Domas is totally going to be something I keep a close eye on throughout preseason start of the year.
Do you think he should be a 20-point scorer average?
Yeah, I mean, right about. I think
okay,
that
he's only done that one time in his career.
Yeah, but I mean, if he's the 18 that he was last year, though, like that's fine with me. I think
no. See, that's what I'm saying. I think he has to be he has to be in this situation a better scorer for them to have success. He is that type of player. It's not taking away from what he does to distribute the ball. He can still do all that. He's still going to be a fantastic rebounder. I'm expecting more shot attempts for him because he hasn't played in a system that's going to have this many touches. It's going to be quicker than what they did in Indiana, for sure.
Yeah, I think
there's more shots though for Herter, for Keegan Murray, and I think like he can set up some of these other guys to get more shots up too.
Yeah, that's true. I'll say this. Like, I guess we could just do this really quickly. Like, what would be a perfect season in your mind for Domas? So for me, it's like 20, 12, and 7. Like, if he can hit that number one, he's an all-star. But number 2, the Kings are good. The Kings are also team.
He's never been up to 7 before though.
Yeah, but
so that's gonna.
I'll say
that's
that
gonna be
he
tough.
hasn't had the shooters. He hasn't had the shooters around him in Indiana.
He's had some okay shooters.
Well, no, but the difference between having a guy like Herter, who everyone in the league is tracking and is game planning for because of his ability to shoot, like you have to actually he has to be part of the game plan, versus a guy like Justin Holiday, who is like his number one target for 3-point shots last year. I mean, just go back and look at their team that they've had the last couple of years. Sure, the Brogdon thing was there, but he wasn't healthy and he wasn't there very often. TJ
Warren or McConnell.
No, TJ Warren. Well, and TJ McConnell. Neither one of them
too, yeah.
are great 3-point shooters. They're more of like super athletes or not super athletes, but they're more of creative scorers than they are shooters. So if you keep going around, like Lance Stevenson's playing a role on that team. Like you got a bunch of guys, and like if Miles Turner is like your number one 3-point option.
Well, and he didn't have Karis LeVert. I mean, the dude got hurt.
Well, even if you had Karis LeVert, though, Karis LeVert is still more of a creator. He's not a pure shooter from the perimeter. So that's where I think, like Sabonis, I think he can get to 7 without even trying, just by feeding the ball to Keegan, to Harrison Barnes, to Monk, to Herter, a couple here and there to Davion Mitchell, a couple here and there to De'Aaron Fox. That's how you get to 7 assists pretty quickly. And like again, I think last year he was like a walking 6 assists with the Kings, and that's with them missing shot after shot after shot.
And they didn't have shooting. Yeah.
Yeah. Brenden, what would you put him at?
Yeah, I think that's about the same. I think like the 18 I think that 7 is a good number. Jokic last year, 7.9. Draymond was the other big that was above 7. I know Jokic is a high bar, but like I think a ridiculously high bar. I definitely
Both of them,
understand, but I
yeah.
think that that's the
Yeah.
point for me is like running the offense fully through Domas. And I think that maybe even like the rebounding number is already really high, but I could put it at like a 13. I think he's far and away the best rebounder on this team. And I think that you see, the scoring totals go up for maybe De'Aaron a little bit compared to last year. You're closer to that 25 that we saw the year prior. I think that Keegan gets a decent amount of buckets. He's comfortable playing off a big. He said, you mentioned Luka Garza. He said he got most his points his freshman year off cutting and playing through Garza when he's getting double during the post. I think he's going to be comfortable there. I think
Wait,
HB has
we
a
got
smart
Chima.
game
Chima told us he's the best cutter in the world.
in the
The
world.
world.
I think Herter gets more than 12 points. Like I think 18, 13, and 7 is a good year for me with Domas. And the big thing is what he does on the defensive end. To be honest, I think this is one of my biggest things for Domas is because you want to be a good defensive team. There's no rim protection on this team anywhere. And sure, like Domas is a fine positional defender, but when you already don't have great perimeter containment, maybe that'll be improved this year. There's ways to that being better than what we saw in years prior, although obviously being a low bar, but not having rim protection in any sort of form, I think, is a really tough thing for teams to deal with. So I think similar numbers to what we saw with his 15 games last year with the Kings, but defense is where I think is going to be the big aspect I'm keeping an eye on with Domas this year.
I'm looking, just for sake of argument, last year the Golden State Warriors averaged 4.5 blocks per game. They're 18th in the league, and they're second in the league in defensive rating. They didn't have a single player average more than 0.7 blocks per game. And it's because they basically just do everything by committee. And I know to compare the Kings to the Warriors, it's not great. But what I'm saying is that like they do have pieces that, especially on the defensive end, kind of look similar at times. I think Wiggins is a better player, a better defensive player than Barnes, of course. But like overall, I think you can kind of see if they can get the right system in, that they might actually be able to take a pretty solid leap as far as a defensive team. And I get you, like having a natural shot blocker is great, but 2 years ago the Kings had Holmes averaged like 1.6 blocks per game, and Hassan Whiteside average, what was it, like over 1, and that was the worst defensive team, one of the worst defensive teams in the history of the league. So, like, I get it. Like, you still want to be able to clog the lane and
They had no perimeter defense.
They had no, yeah,
None.
and no perimeter defense was seen. Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to tie it all together, and that's what's going to be the hardest thing for Mike Brown is you have all of these moving elements that you've got to figure out how they fit into place, and like really no time to do it. I mean, Monday is the first preseason game, and I think we'll learn a lot about, number one, who the starting lineup is going to be, which I think we can all predict. But I think it's also why we're probably going to see Rashawn Holmes play, because Rashawn Holmes is a guy that can average over a block a game. And I think Keegan Murray can get close to a block a game. Like, so they don't have like zero shot blocking ability. It's just they don't have a true, like rim protector at the back end.
Yeah, and Mike Brown has talked about the importance of, just defense being all 5 players and it's not just one guy, obviously. So I think, yeah, just a lot of being on the same page and being creative with coverages, which I think is something that we saw Golden State do a lot last year. Even like just watching some of those Nigerian national team games that was Mike Brown, Luke Laux, and Jordy Fernandez. Like they're very creative and switching up their coverages all the time. I think we're going to see like anytime Davion Mitchell's out on the floor, I'm expecting him to be picking up guys full court. That's something we saw Golden State do a lot with like Luka last year in the playoffs. So I think that there are shortcomings when it comes to defensive talent on Sacramento's roster, but being creative in working around that seems to be a strong suit of Mike Brown.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get to the business of basketball. Brenden, you did kind of go off on this on Twitter. We got to see Bennett Salvatore in the gym yesterday. Can you give us the take foul in a nutshell?
Yeah, I was trying to listen in on the speech that the Kings were getting, which I thought was a very funny looking setting, by the way. It's just like these,
Dude,
middle school slideshows just never end, apparently.
you
What were you gonna
were
say, Sean?
locked in.
You were
You
locked
were
in. We
trying
were
to
watching
listen.
you. We were watching you.
I was trying to listen.
Sean's like, hey, look at Brendan. Brendan's like super.
Brennan was
hyper-focused.
like, "Oh, you were burning daggers through Bennett Salvatore, man. You could have been front of the class right over there. You were all in."
And I'll tell you, like when Bonds was there, I know I took a video of Bonds out in the center court, and
Yeah,
someone,
your video was probably like this,
yeah,
flipping him
yeah.
off.
Yeah. Well, actually, they're like, "Hey, was there anything Barry said to you guys like out there?" And I thought, yeah, I leaned over to Frankie and I said, "Yeah." He said, "Don't do drugs." Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I was bringing this up specifically because someone like commented, "Hey, you need a omnidirectional mic or something," and I'm like, "Look, man, that's basically like the size of a Costco. It's got a 80-foot tall ceiling or 60-foot tall ceiling. Like they're all the way on the other side of the court. We're just trying. I'm using a phone. We're just trying to get whatever we can to show people that Barry Bonds is there. Like I'm not going to be able. There isn't a mic that you're going to find on a single media member that's going to be able to hone in and get clean audio on Barry Bonds from across the room, right, Sean? Like you didn't get clean audio of everything he said, right?
No, and even like from when I was at 10, I have a better what we call a NAP mic, our secondary mic that's on the camera, even with a better screen protector that looks like a dead cat on there. But like that one's a lot better than what I've had prior. And yeah, I mean, it's a noisy, echoey gym where any little basketball hitting the floor is gonna kind of make things
It's
a lot
jarring. That's why
Yeah.
De'Aaron Fox was like, like, what just happened? What was that?
But if you like, I felt like it took me some time. I tried to play with the audio a little bit and editing, and I wanted to be able to show people that I made an attempt. And there are things you can hear from that discussion. It was pretty quiet, at least on our end, which was great.
Yeah.
The gym was quiet. The whole team was listening to Barry Bonds talk.
Most of them had no idea who he was. But
Yeah,
that's okay.
but there was enough that were at least amused and knew that this was oh shit, this is a big moment, this is a cool moment. But others were just like, okay, it's Barry Bonds, and I met someone famous today, and that happens a lot during the course of an NBA season where you'll meet luminaries and celebrities and things of that nature. But you could tell it meant a lot to Mike Brown. Obviously, has a relationship with him, and Vivek had just had him throw out the first pitch. That Vivek caught behind home plate over at the River Cats finale, and kind of touching in on that, like, yeah, the Kings now own the River Cats. It's not just Vivek; they have control of the River Cats. So they had just ushered in a new era over there and brought him over, and I thought it was a neat thing. But yeah, I wanted to try and show people at least what was said in there, and we're not. It's not like we could go walk up to that. We had to stay on the other end of the court.
They were like 75 feet away. 75, yeah.
We could not cross the gun line. You cross the gun line, you get shot. If you've seen the movie Life, and so you can tell them about the gun line boss. Go ahead.
Okay, so we got sidetracked, Brendan. We'll get so me and Sean were watching you and like, Brendan is fully
hilarious.
Engaged.
I was trying.
And again, it's a TV on the wall, on the side wall.
We had the worst angle possible.
80 feet at least away, maybe 90 feet away on this side wall where, I mean, they have a basically a cabinet that opens up and there's a TV hiding there and all the players are around it. So, Brendan, just what is the new take foul rule to get back to the question at hand?
So what I've been curious about is like what is the technical wording, because they have to follow it by the book, right, when it comes to referees. But I don't even have a great answer on that, and it seems like De'Aaron didn't either when he kind of got asked about it. He was like, sometimes guys are going to disguise it as we were trying to go after the ball, and I think that there is a difference between the two. But the ref was there, said like, oh, you guys know when it is an intentional foul to stop a transition. And it's like, sure, but I don't exactly know how the refs are going to differentiate that when it comes to the specific definition. But when a transition take foul does occur, The team that's fouled gets one free throw and the ball back. And it does not have to be the person that was fouled that takes the free throw, which this sounds very much like a De'Aaron Fox rule. De'Aaron Fox could be the one to get fouled, and you could send Malik Monk, Kevin Huerter to the free throw line to take the one, and you get the ball back.
As long as they're on the floor.
Yes, sorry, as long as they are on the floor when the foul happens.
Yeah.
And if you're in the bonus and you get fouled, transition take foul, it's not 2 free throws. It's just the same way that it would be a transition take foul. You would get your 1 free throw and the ball back, although transition take fouls do apply as team fouls towards the bonus. So that was majority of everything I got there.
If I was Bennett Salvatore, I would say, look, rule is in place because you're taking away the excitement from the game and you're going to be penalized for it. So just let them go down and dunk it.
Yeah, and I kind of wonder, like, we didn't ask Fox sort of the follow-up, like, how excited are you about the no-take foul? Because he's the fastest dude in the league, and he can get out ahead of people, and, you know, they do wrap him up quite often. And, like, get him out there and, like, let him throw down. He's a guy that, you know, has slowed down as far as a dunker over the last couple of seasons. I'd like to see him get down and hammer a couple of crazy dunks. That would be fun.
Do you think there's anything to, like, the mental aspect of not having De'Aaron be the one to take the free throw? Do you think we ever see, like, Mike Brown be like, oh, I trust you, you go take it, or...
You know, It used to be like, yeah, the great shooter, whoever your great shooter is, takes a foul. Like, and I know, like, Peja and Doug used to look at they were like number 1 and number 2, or number 2 and number 3 in the league at all times in free throw percentage. Whoever was leading at that moment got to take the free throw. So if there's a tech or anything, they would look at each other and it would be like, oh, it's your game. You get to go shoot it. So yeah, I mean, I also think it, like, makes De'Aaron Fox need to be a better free throw shooter. Get up there and hit a shot. I think it's interesting.
Barnes last year, 82% from the line. Kevin Huerter last year, 80%. Malik Monk last year, 79%.
That's not great.
De'Aaron Fox was
74.
Let's see.
He's got to type. He's got
something around there. 75.
75. Yeah.
Which was up, right? That was higher.
That was up.
Remember,
so
right?
71.9 last year. Yeah, the year before.
Yeah.
Yeah, but his free throw numbers were down, his attempts per game, and that was last year's point of emphasis, to take away the unnatural play, the unnatural look. And so I don't know. I mean, we'll see how it goes. I would like to see Fox get back up to the 7 or 8 free throws a game that he was at this season before. Because that's where he can really 7.2. He lost 1.3 attempts per game last season, and I think it was strictly on the way that they implemented the rule and took away, his ability. Sorry about that.
I also think.
Go
ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't interrupt. I also think it happened because he was playing off ball, and so many of his attempts were in the paint, whereas before you didn't see so many of those. Like he you know what he is around the free throw jumper, all that stuff, extended right or left. But last year I found myself seeing him get into the paint and try to force a lot of stuff, looking to draw a foul. And I remember we would make mention, James, where it's like he's not looking to score, he's looking to draw a foul. And that's why he's not getting a lot of the calls, because he's not looking to score the basketball.
Yeah, outside of the normal movement of a game. Yeah. I think it'll be interesting. Again, like him getting to 25 points, there's no secret why he wasn't at 25 points per game last season. He lost 2 points per game, and one of them was that he shot like 1.3 less free throws per game, and the other's because he shot like 1.4 less 3-pointers per game. Like if those numbers are back up, then he'll get to 25 points without any problem, and I think he can go up from there. I actually think he can have slightly better season and take some of the pressure off of some of these younger guys or guys who are trying to figure out their way on this team. Okay, so I think we're wrapping this thing up. We're back to 2 pods again every week. We'll figure out what days we're going to do them. But one early in the week, one late in the week, just kind of the basics that we've always done. We won't have one on Monday night because of course the Kings are playing the Lakers. And we'll have to fit one in probably on Tuesday. But yeah, we're getting back up to speed here, and it should be the coverage. We're all over this. Make sure you're following all three of us on Twitter. We're doing our best to give you every bit of content that you can possibly get through Fox 40 and the King's Herald and the King's Pulse podcast and here at the King's Beat. Let's start with Brenden. Do you have any final thoughts?
I do not. I guess first time I appreciate a movie recommendation.
How dare
Yeah,
you? What are you
7
talking
was a
about?
solid
First
one.
time?
Oh, Memento.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, yeah, I think so. The only other one.
right.
Oh, well, no. Godfather was good. I have to take that back. Godfather was obviously
Oh,
a good
okay.
one.
Godfather was
Of course.
good. Yeah.
Of course. I forgot.
Next
Yeah,
time he's
no.
standing over there staring off in the distance, we're gonna throw spitballs at you, Brenden.
That is
That
all
soured
I
me.
got.
Sean, what do you got? Final thoughts?
He didn't appreciate swingers. I hate this guy. No. No.
I
Final
hate you,
thoughts.
Brenden.
Final thoughts. How about I really appreciated all the Rihanna feedback I got. That was kind of fun. Even though, yes, I was on a roll and I was spitballing. Speaking of spitballing, I was just going over my ideal. Like you guys didn't exist. I was completely zoned
We
in on
felt it.
Rihanna, and
We felt it.
Yeah, sorry about that. I called her song Lemonade because of the lyrics she has in there, and it got me going. But yeah, I got a lot.
Does
of
that mean
feedback
you
on that,
re-listened
and
to
was
it
kinda
back?
fun.
If you caught that, did you listen to it back?
I didn't think I said it. Yeah, someone had pointed out that I said lemonade, and I was like, no, I didn't.
You should have
Defensive
clipped
as
it and
always.
totally embarrassed
And
you.
I went back to it. And I was like, oh no, because the Rihanna stan that I am, I was like, I can't believe I said that. So that's okay. But
Okay.
it was no. The feedback was fun, whether it was good or bad. Like there's a lot of people that can't wait to see Rihanna in the Super Bowl, and I'm one of them. So.
There we go. I'm okay. So my final thoughts. Everyone out there, you should know by now. I'm a fantasy football guy. I've been watching football for decades and decades. I love football. I was absolutely appalled at what happened on Thursday night. To watch a player go into a brain spasm and watch his hand start to twist on the field because he was clearly having a traumatic brain injury on the field because someone let him go out there. Absolutely stunning. I know I made this. I said this on D-Lo and Casey. I played high school football. I played for 3 years. I never missed a day of practice until I decided I didn't want to play my senior year. I got battered. I was little. It took me forever to grow. I still have aches and pains from playing football. And you know what they do out there is crazy. I appreciate watching it. And I've said this, and people were stunned, but my boys will never put a helmet on ever. They'll never walk out there and play football. It's just what we know now about concussions and CTE and everything else. So I was stunned that happened. I watched the game on Sunday when Tua got hurt and watched him stagger, and to see him come back in the third quarter was the most embarrassing thing for the NFL I've ever seen. And then to have him play 4 days later and have something like that happen to him. So just thoughts and prayers out to Tua. I hope everything works out. We're talking about a young dude who, is all of a sudden needs to start worrying about brain injuries, and that's not cool. So that's my rant. Just be better, NFL. That was absolute dog shit, and I don't know how else to say it, but, come on, protect your players. That's not okay at all. And just an embarrassment. I hope people get sued, and I hope they lose, and I hope they lose their licenses, and I hope people lose their jobs. Something like that should never happen. The game has come too far to see something like that happen on national television. So, sorry if that's my rant today.
Final thoughts left us on a downer.
That's right. Final thoughts.
Pick us back up, James.
Yeah, you know what? It has been a fun camp. We're having a good time. And I think we're going to see a shift here in the coming days, I hope, where we start seeing a little bit less media and a little less rapid fire at every single one of these things, so we can actually get some longer form questions in. But who knows? Maybe we won't. Maybe we will see the same amount. I'm always someone who promotes more media in Sacramento, and now I'm like, okay, this has become a little chaotic and crazy. But we're gonna have you covered here, and I think that's all you need to know. Like, so outside of that, jump on board with the Kings Beat. Give us a thumbs up, subscribe. You can find links to the Kings Beat down below. If you have a business and you want to sponsor the Kings Beat podcast, there's also a link down below in the description on YouTube. I'll send out something probably tomorrow where you'll actually be able to sign up. And if you have a business and you're interested in sponsoring the show and jumping on board with us here, but we're doing good work and we're having a good time doing it. So you guys ready to end this thing? I know Sean is. I know I got to get on the radio in 10 minutes.
I am all good.
There we go. Okay, so for Fox 40s, Sean Cunningham, and the Kings Pulse Podcast, Brenden Nunes. I'm James Ham, Kings Beat Insider and ESPN 1320 and all that stuff. We'll see you probably on Tuesday.